Hey, today we're doing a little bit of a different kind of video. So we're not actually teaching today, but you are going to listen a little bit to me talking about some books. Now, I always do say that reading and writing is a terrible way to speak English. And it's true. You won't speak at all by doing that. But if you listen to an audiobook, you'll go a little bit farther because you'll better your listening. And if you repeat after the audiobook, you repeat what they're saying, it's just as good as singing a song or acting out a movie. And that is speaking. That's speaking and listening training right there with audiobooks specifically. But you can also do this amazing hack. Before I start talking about the book, I'll help you out. There's this app called Google Play Books. Now, I personally love using it. There's this feature on the app that says read aloud. Here's my book, right? And then I click on the corner and then it says read aloud and look.
Thanks to Chrisinda Lynch.
It starts talking. Now, the voice isn't exactly beautiful, but it's good enough to understand what people are saying and to get a very clear English pronunciation if that's what you're looking for. You're welcome. Today we're talking about this trilogy that is pretty simple to read if you ask me. It's by Stephanie Garber. It's in the young adult category, which is typically for ages 13 to about 17, 18, 19. Now that would equal to about B1 to C1 level of English. Some books are more difficult than others. This book series I'm about to talk about specifically is one of the easier ones to read, which is why I didn't like it so much. There's 3 books in the series. It started out, I think, as a duology, which means only 2 books. Now there's 3, which means it's a trilogy. If there's only one book that doesn't have a series, it's called a standalone book. There's some book vocabulary for you. The first book in the series is called Once Upon a Broken Heart. The second book is The Ballad of Never After. The third book is called A Curse for True Love. These books are very fantasy-esque. It's about a make-believe world or a pretend imaginary fictitious world in that there is a prophecy of a girl who has pink and yellow hair. They call it rose gold hair. You know, the color of gold that's like pinkish. Yeah, that's called rose gold. This girl's world goes upside down when she kind of accidentally, kind of not accidentally, asks for a wish, basically, from someone called a fate. Now, there are specific kind of fates, which are magical beings, people, kind of, that give out kind of help to people who pray to them or wish things of them. Now, this girl was in love with one of her neighbors, I think it was, and she wanted the wedding between her neighbor and her sister to stop because somehow her sister ended up being the one to marry this guy and she didn't. So she was very angry about it and she went to a church. It seemed like an abandoned church. She just went in there and she was kind of sad and she almost accidentally said, "Oh, I want my sister's wedding to stop." But there was a guy in there and he looked like he was crying or something. And he turned out to be this magical person and he made it come true. Poof! Just magically like that, the wedding was stopped and everybody turned to stone. You know Greek mythology? There's a Greek myth about that Medusa turns everyone to stone, the girl with the snakes for hair. Yeah, that idea. It's called being petrified, turned to stone. By the way, you could also say you're petrified if you're very, very scared of something. Good note right there. I'm petrified. I'm so scared. The people at the wedding on the wedding day get turned to stone, but this girl, her name is Evangeline, she feels so bad that it happened because that's not how she wanted the wedding to stop. Of course, she wouldn't wish for them to be turned to stone. So she got really angry at the fate that gave her that wish, and she wanted him to reverse it, to make it not happen. There was no way to do that, so she ended up drinking out of a cup that said poison or something like that to try to reverse it. Now, when she drank out of it, I do believe she died. But she did reverse it, and everybody who was stone was not stone anymore. Everything went back to normal, sort of. This is all about the first book. And now, is this really a spoiler? No, because it happens right at the beginning. Spoiler is when I tell you something I shouldn't have and ruin the book for you. Anyways, what did I think about this first book? I rated it 3 out of 5 stars. Because it kind of sucked. It was kind of not the greatest. The writing was too fantastical. It was not very believable. It was very childlike, like magic and fairies and unicorns and oh my gosh, poison, death, It was very dramatic. Let's put it that way. It was very simple to read though. The way she wrote it wasn't complicated at all, which I also didn't like because it felt like it was for little children. But okay. If you're looking to find books that are easy to read, B1 level, this is a good start. That's what I'm going to say. There is a lot of folklore magic about 2 different regions of the world, the North and the South. It has a lot to do with sisterhood, also heartbreak, as you can see from the title. But that's the first book. Let's get into the second book. Each book is about 300 pages. They're not very long, and I got through them very quickly. Also on this app, there's a translating section and a word definition. So you press and hold a word, you can translate it to your language. You press and hold a word, you can get also the definition of it. Now, if I tell you too much about the second and third book, I'm going to definitely ruin the story. So we're just going to go with the main themes. Somebody is hunting her. There's this story about the fox and the hunter that's in their northern mythology. She's from the south, but then she travels to the north, blah, blah, blah. In this story, the boy, another boy, different boy, the prince, he is the prince. So the prince, which will be the king once he marries someone, he is turned into the archer from this story. And she is the fox from the story. So as you know, the archer or the hunter is going to kill the animal. So she's on the run for her life from this guy, the prince. And it's all about her adventures going around the north, different places. You can see a map in the beginning of the book, so that's kind of great. So you can see, they went here and here and here and here. And it's really cool in that aspect. There's something called the Great Houses, which we can also see in our kind of daily life. Like if there's a house called Hawthorne House and the Hawthorne family has been living there forever, they built that house, they're pioneers or the first people who came to that land, then that could be called just like a great house or, a notable old house, historical, preserved place. She also meets another fate, and that fate is her best friend. She's also very stylish, so I loved the fashion aspect. There's a lot of good clothing description. So if you're a boy and you don't care about fashion, at least you'll understand different words for women's clothing, for men's more fancy clothing, like suits and things like that. There's also some vampires in here, so it does get more fantastical. Can you believe it? Oh my God. You get to see the description of their lair or their cave, like underground tunnels. That's kind of interesting to hear what it would look like and all that. Before I get on to the last book, there's also something going on in the story, which is very important. They're looking for 4 different pieces or bricks of an archway. So like an archway, a domed kind of circular doorway. Now these archways are like magical doors to go somewhere else. So you go inside and then you end up in a different place. They're like teleportation devices. And she needs to find 4 different pieces that are missing. When she puts them together, she can go into the special Valerie Arch, which is where something from the most magical family lives, the Valors. So they're trying to find these pieces, the whole book too, at the same time as they're running away from the hunter, the archer. Me saying them, referring to Evangeline and that fate from the first book. Do they find all the pieces to open the arch, to go through it, to find what's on the other side, the Valerie Arch? I don't know. You're going to have to read it to find out. So this girl dies again. Well, that fate that she was with the whole time, he tries to bring her back. So the last book is called A Curse for True Love, and it's because somebody put the curse on them. Them talking about the fox and the archer curse. So when she dies, something will happen to her. Of course, she's not going to stay dead for long because what kind of story would that be? So the archer, who is at this point no longer the archer, and she is no longer the fox. That has been dealt with. The archer who does bring her back to life goes a little crazy up in there. He's not normal. He's not okay. Because to bring her back, someone had to forfeit something. They had to give something up. What did they give up? I also cannot say. That's up to you to find out in this story when you read it or listen to it. It's very significant because it kind of messes with the girl, Evangeline. She doesn't know a lot of things anymore. A few more magical things come into play. Other stories become real. They change the outcome of some of the character stories. So that's quite interesting. We also get to meet a bunch of new characters in the last book, some of which I really do find helpful to the development of the story. They change the relationships with the girl Evangeline. I'm going to end off this whole thought by saying this main character is not very specific or special. She feels like a plot-driving character. She's not anything that I would remember later because she didn't have so much personality. Versus the Fates had a lot of personality. And she was just kind of there to keep the story going. I couldn't really say anything special about her other than her rose gold hair and how many princess dresses she was wearing, which is why I don't think I liked this book. I generally like people that are main characters that are very strong and move the story. So you're invested in the character. But when the only character that I'm personally invested in are the side characters or the supporting characters, that seems to be a problem in the story, if you ask me. The plot is just very fluffy. It's filled with like a lot of beautiful descriptions, very like simplistic, beautiful descriptions. So you get an atmospheric feel and vibe, but the story isn't very strong. And then there's a lot of extra stories with those magical objects that I was mentioning that come in but are not very well told. It's like very quickly explained what happens with those things. That's why this book series could have been better, in my opinion. For learning a lot of descriptive vocabulary, it's pretty good. A fairy tale story like this, a once upon a time type of story, would not be a good story if it didn't have a happy ending, or would it? Because a lot of the traditional stories ended with everyone dying, much like Game of Thrones. Did it end happy? Did it not? I don't know. Yeah, you can check the books out. They're probably for sale online if you want a cheaper version through Amazon, Kindle, all that stuff. If you have trouble with listening and speaking, remember what's going to help you is the listening and speaking. So listening to the audiobook version on Audible, if you want to buy that subscription, would be good. Speaking everything out loud when you're reading it, like reading it to somebody else, would be helpful if you have children, or reading it to yourself out loud, like this. "What's wrong with you?" Jax bellowed. Wilfrith looked at him grimly and ran a hand over his beard. Like that, like narrating the story. If you're interested in learning more English with me, subscribe to my channel. And if you want some more personal help, you can feel free to comment the word private to know more information of how to enter the private school. And that's where you'll get access to all of these books within the complete A to C English program. I'll see you later. Thanks for being here with me studying, and have a good day.